Welcome to the special broadcast here on I-24 News as we continue our rolling coverage on day 65 of the war here in Israel. The ticking clock and the breaking point. Tense morning on the northern border this hour. Yet another round of red siren alerts being heard in northern communities. The IDF hitting terror targets in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah continues the fire. In the south, intense fighting in several Hamas strongholds as more terrorists surrender. But security officials clarify from this to a full Hamas breakdown, there's still a long way to go. A long way to go, but not much time to do so, as the U.S. appears to be posing a soft deadline for Israel to wrap it up. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin this afternoon, is saying Rome wasn't built in a day, and Hamas will not be toppled in two.
In the last 2 days, I spoke with both Chancellor Scholz and French President Macron, as well as with other leaders. I told them that it is impossible to support the elimination of Hamas with one hand and pressure us to end the war with the other hand, which will prevent the elimination of Hamas. And I think that in this struggle, justice is with us and unity is with us. When we are united as a people and as a country, there is no force that can prevent us from doing the right thing.
Crossing now live to the Israel northern front near the border with Lebanon. I-24 News correspondent Zach Anders and the I-24 News team there on the ground. Zach, thank you so very much for joining us. Well, those past couple of minutes, yet another round of red siren alerts in northern communities, and Hezbollah is claiming responsibility for at least 3 such incidents since morning hours. What can you tell us?
And this red alert, the latest in the last 5 minutes, comes in the community of Shlomi, close to the Mediterranean, very coastal area that this often does not spread the red alerts. We've seen these all across the northern border, of course, but they have been more inland where some of the more mountainous terrain can be found, and Hezbollah has the ability and access to retreat rather quickly deeper into southern Lebanon before the IDF retaliates. So it is interesting to see this red alert come on a community close to the coast. We'll wait and see what the results of this alert is, but it has been a day with several injuries to IDF forces along the border here, with Hezbollah claiming through Lebanese media channels that their unmanned drones had a success, a direct hit. The IDF says no, they were intercepted still, that some form of the projectile or the drone did seem to impact where IDF soldiers were nearby. They suffered moderate injuries. We're waiting on the exact clarification as to the extent of those injuries, and the IDF then says a handful of other soldiers, an unspecified number of other soldiers suffered shrapnel wounds and smoke inhalation injuries as well from this earlier strike a few hours ago.
And Zach, briefly before we let you go, it seems that when it comes to the order of things, if you will, in the north, it's to an extent the opposite of what we're seeing in the south. If in the Gaza Strip it is military action first, diplomatic solution of sorts later, in the north, from what we understand, there is an attempt to reach some sort of a diplomatic agreement, but no one, far from it, is ruling out the option of military action afterwards.
And the IDF is receiving acclaim from the actors that support the region here. The U.S., even the U.K., has come out and applauded the restraint that the IDF has shown in its policy of retaliatory first, limiting its offensive capabilities so that they are striking Hezbollah after Hezbollah has initiated some act of force. That is, of course, limiting and challenging in the IDF's ability to maintain its security presence here. They do have a significant advantage with its intelligence gathering, the drones and the balloons in the air that can see as Hezbollah attempts to descend towards the border with their crews and attempt to fire these rockets.
I-24 News correspondent Zach Anders on the Israel-Northern border. Thank you so very much for this. And from north, we're heading south now. I-24 News correspondent Pia Steckelbach with the I-24 News team there. Pia, thank you so very much for joining us. Well, this past hour, yet another round of red alert sirens being heard down south as well, while intense fighting in the Strip continue. Wrap it up for us.
Right, Ellie, fierce fighting is what we are seeing here. Also from the ground here, we're looking into the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We're looking into the areas of Bet Hanun and Bet Lahia. You can see the plumes of smoke rising from these areas again. We are here in the city of Sderot looking into the northern part of the Gaza Strip, but we do know that heavy fighting is happening currently also in the Gaza City area and also in the very southern part of the Gaza Strip, in the biggest city of southern Gaza, in Khan Yunis. So fighting happening all across the Strip, really. What we are also hearing is outgoing Israeli artillery on a quite regular basis here. We also heard machine guns. We can hear drones up here in the air. So you really see this is also what the Israeli army is saying, that fighting is continuing both from the air, from the sky, and also from the sea. Now, the Israeli army has published that throughout last night, they have targeted not less than 250 Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. So fighting is continuing. We do know that Israeli ground troops are trying to press, to push further down to the south, which obviously makes it very, very hard also for catering to the civilian population there. We are hearing intense warnings coming from bodies such as the UN that the civilian population does not receive close to enough food because the fighting has expanded to really all across the Strip, which makes it very hard for these deliveries to actually reach the civilian population. Now, Hamas, you're right, Eli, has resumed fire onto Israel. We have seen a number of rocket launches that basically started in the noon hours after a 20-hour lull. So this is a way of Hamas showing that they still have the capability to launch rockets onto Israel. We have seen rockets onto the communities very, very close to the border. About half an hour ago, there was rocket fire here on the city of Sderot. And this is, again, a way of Hamas showing that they're still capable of firing these rockets. But these 20-hour pause that we have seen, which is quite irregular, that also shows you that they're trying to apply some restraint because nobody really knows how long this war will continue. We are seeing some very soft pressure from the U.S. reports that this war should end with the end of the year, but the Israeli army has not given anything such as a date to the end of this war. We might speak about weeks, we might speak about months, and this is also something that Hamas has to take into consideration in the way that it uses its rockets that it wants to fire towards Israel.
That's right. As long as Hamas is showing not just ability, but will and desire to keep on fighting, the fighting will continue. The war can end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, simply as such. I-24 News correspondent Pia Steckelbach, thank you very much for this. Much more from Pia later on in the day, of course. And we want to welcome now in studio Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, former head of the civilian department at Koga. Thank you so very much, Colonel Yakubovich, for joining us. Well, let's try to get a better understanding of what's happening now in the Strip, because despite the fact that control was gained over many areas in the northern part of the Strip, there are still active fights there, meaning that there's a major difference between gaining control and clearing territory.
Well, those are pockets. As if I refer to the military definition, those are pockets of resistance. If you remember a few weeks ago, one of the most important things that the IDF achieved is that the commanders of the battalions, of the brigades were killed. So the moment you kill the chain of command, and then some communication between the north and the south, what happens is that you get pockets that are left surrounded by the IDF. Now, those pockets, it depends on their commanders, will decide what to do, either to surrender or to continue fighting till the day. And this is what happened yesterday, for example, in Jabalia. A few hundreds of terrorists decided, because they have no connection with their commanders, there is no connection between the north and the headquarters, Sinwar, in Khan Yunis. So they were isolated, so they took a decision to surrender. So we've seen the pictures of hundreds of terrorists surrendering. even also given their weapons.
Right.
In Sajaiya is a very unique neighborhood. It was always like that. It's not something new. I've been in Sajaiya hundreds of times. The people there are a little bit different, hardcore of Hamas. And I believe that the terrorists there will fight, I don't know if till the death, but they will continue fighting until one of their local commanders from Sajaiya will tell them to surrender. So what we see actually is stand-alone units, okay, of terror Hamas groups that...
It's not Hamas surrendering, but rather cracks in the chain of command.
The problem is not the problem. The IDF created for Hamas two problems, okay? One, the chain of command collapsed. If you kill the commanders of the brigades, it's like in the IDF, the commander of the Northern Command. This is the meaning, and then you kill the ones who actually command on the battalions. The brigade, the brigade, not the brigade, the battalion commanders. Okay, those are the most important people.
It's a structure or hierarchy similar to any proper army, so to speak.
Yes, but the important for the battalion commander is the guy that stands at the peak of that pyramid. Okay, so the moment you kill him, it depends on his deputy. Who was he? How is he? Was he popular or not? Sajaiya were always known as the hardcore of Hamas. Number two, you also have to cut the chain of communication. Okay, and this is also something that happened, and we see that until yesterday, if there were rockets launched from Gaza, immediately there were rockets launched from the north, and I see the change from this morning, that we see the majority of the launches from the north and not from the south.
We're seeing now live images of the southern part of the Gaza Strip, the southern Hamas stronghold of Khan Yunis. This is the skylines there this hour as the artillery fire continues as well. But moving from one battlefront to another for a second, the board of advisors of the prestigious Wharton Business School came out against her, and then donors threatened to pull big-ticket donations. It all just became too much. In University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill resigned. Senior correspondent Owen Alterman reminds us of what happened and of the fork in the road ahead.
If only Liz McGill had followed Benjamin Franklin's advice. Better slip with foot than tongue. And so the University of Pennsylvania president has now resigned after testimony in Congress last week that pitted donors and even the state's governor against her.
Specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
McGill's resignation Saturday followed that testimony on Capitol Hill, which generated an avalanche of criticism that gained speed. McGill tried to backtrack in the aftermath.
It's evil, plain and simple. I want to be clear. A call for genocide of Jewish people is threatening.
The walk back was too little too late, and McGill's wavering before Congress and afterward led many to believe she could not lead through what's seen as a crisis.
36 hours ago, I, along with most of campus, sought refuge in our rooms as classmates and professors chanted proudly for the genocide of Jews while igniting smoke bombs and defacing school property. And in fact, Penn's president did choose silence.
McGill's resignation will boost scrutiny of anti-Semitism on U.S. college campuses. Jewish students continue to charge that rules on free speech have been applied unevenly, protecting other minority groups while not protecting Jews. There are two fixes. Universities could clamp down on pro-Palestinian speech seen as anti-Semitic, or could relax speech codes across the board, allowing speech targeting a variety of minorities. It's a crossroads and a reckoning.
And for more, we're crossing now live to Eagle Marcus, Director of Republican Overseas. Mr. Marcus, what a pleasure to have you on, even under these circumstances. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, McGill didn't wait to get sacked. There are still congressional calls to fire the other two presidents. What's the talk today in the U.S.?
It's a matter of time. They have to go. The testimony last week was outrageous. It was, it really facilitated even more hatred. This idea of context. Everyone has kind of, condemned that across the board. And what's clear is that they are not up to tackling this problem. They don't really recognize that it is a problem. Right. Somehow, in their sick minds, it's okay in the right context to be anti-Semitic and to effectively call for the genocide of Jews on their campuses. And I appreciate them trying to apologize, but we all know why that happened.
Apologize-ish.
Started pulling money out. Yeah, donors started pulling money out, and guess what? Oh, we apologize.
Yeah.
Got to tell you something, a little bit too little and way too little, and certainly way too late. They have to go.
Yeah, and Eagle, I'm listening to you, and it reminds me of a conversation I had last week on a different but yet very much related topic. This appalling video of 3 employees in this cafe in Oakland, California, preventing a Jewish woman from entering the bathroom as if it was Berlin 1938. Well, anyways, we had a debate here, even behind the scenes, on whether firing them is counter-conducive to an extent. As in, if they're going to get fired, they're not going to think, oh, I probably did something very wrong. I should fix my ways. They're going to load on some more hate. And on the other hand, well, I prefer jobless anti-Semites, right? In this respect, can this whole thing backlash just fuel the anti-Semitic fire?
I'm not sure how much worse it can get when you have thousands of people in rallies all over the country and all over the world calling for the extermination of the Jewish people. It doesn't get worse than that. So I'm a big believer that, of course, they have to get fired. They're those establishments are going to get sued. They're going to lose. And it's going to cost them a ridiculous amount of money to make sure that it never happens again. And they're going to be made examples of. But that being said, we cannot allow hate to fester. The reality is this is not a problem of education. I remember also being on I-24 last week and debating this issue, and the gentleman on the other side said, well, it's really, we have to go out and educate them about this issue. No, this is not about education. Because if you pointed to a map and said, tell me, what sea and what river are you talking about?
From the mountain to the beach, what was it? Yeah.
Right? They have no idea. And so without having an idea of what's going on, the only thing you can conclude is that this is pure hatred. Hatred needs to be rejected. These people need to be made famous because it will stick on their resume anytime that they ever try to get a job. And without consequences, this hatred is going to spread. This is not something that you can just please, let's be nice and make peace.
Kumbaya.
These people need to be rejected. Yeah, kumbaya does not work with them, unfortunately.
Yeah, but Eagle, before we let you go, because you did mention funds, and this issue is more fundamental than just that, because according to this research of the ISGAP, the Qatari Wealth Fund is the highest foreign donor to elite American universities, and not just them, other American and European institutions. Some estimated between $500 billion to $1 trillion. You really cannot fight the big bucks.
There's a reason why we don't allow foreign donors to fund our elections. And the same thing should apply for our education and our educational institutions. We cannot allow this foreign money from countries that hate us and hate our values to indoctrinate our children in the classroom. And so one of the problems, of course, is that we have to make it illegal to accept foreign funding. The other side of it is that if there must be consequences to these institutions who allow this to fester on their campuses. And so the other question you have to ask is, well, exactly how much federal funding should go to these institutions who want to allow these mass rallies calling for the genocide of the Jewish people? So we got to get rid of foreign funding, but we also have to review federal funding because, quite frankly, I'm a taxpayer in the U.S. I pay a lot in taxes in the U.S. And guess what? Not $1 of mine should go to allowing these institutions to create a safe haven for these haters.
Well, I have a feeling that the Qatari taxpayers are a bit more satisfied than you are. Yigal Marcus, Director of Republican Overseas, thank you very much for this.
Pleasure.
And as the war, of course, in Gaza goes on, concern is growing about the health, the well-being, the state of the remaining hostages still being held there. More testimony now from Israeli survivors of Hamas captivity who were released just last month during the ceasefire. Take a listen.
שמי עדינה משה ואני חזרתי משבי החמאס אבל השארתי שם את החברים הטובים שלי מקיבוץ ניר עוז שנשארו שם והם די הרבה כולם מבוגרים מאוד עם מחלות רקע קשות וללא תרופות מתאימות.
אני אופליה רויטמן בת 77 גרתי בניר עוז משם לקחו אותי בטרקטור, הייתי בטרקטור ברצפה של טרקטור. בבית הם עשו לי עם רובה פצע גדול ביד.
שמי מרגלית מוזס, אני מקיבוץ ניר עוז. בשבת, 7 באוקטובר, הורידו אותי מנהרה. אני בלילה משתמשת במכשיר נשימה, ואני לקחתי אותו איתי, כדי שאני אוכל לישון. והוא האחר שהיה, התעצבן עליי ולקח ממני את המכשיר, ואז...
קוראים לי מאיה רגב, נחטפתי עם אחי הקטן ועם אחד החברים הכי טובים שלי.
אני תאי רגב, הייתי בשבי החמאס 54 יום. הימים שם עוברים כמו נצח. הימים שם קשים מאוד, ואני מדבר, אם זה הרעב, אם זה הגעגוע למשפחה, אם זה המנטליות הקשה, התנאים הקשים.
כל יום שם הוא כמו גיהנום. פחד לא נורמלי, 0 שינה בלילה, הגעגועים הם מטורפים, והחוסר ידיעה הוא פשוט מפחיד.
מצב המזון שמה הלך והידרדר. הגענו בסופו של דבר לאכילת אורז בלבד.
פחדתי מאוד, שבועיים ראשונות. חשבתי שאני אהיה משוגע. בגלל הייתי לבד, הייתי כמעט בלי אור, הייתי כמעט מאוכל. האוכל היה לי מאוד חשוב. שאני יש לי ביד או במגידה. הזכיר לי הנושא של השואה. אני אוכלת חתיכות פיתה בשביל מחר שיהיה לי אוכל.
49 יום לא ישנתי. היו קשיים. היו קשיים נפשיים, היו קשיים פיזיים, וכל יום שעובר זה נעשה יותר ויותר קשה. המצב של להיות חטופים במנהרות או איפה שלא נמצאים, זה מצב בלתי נסבל, קשה מאוד, ועם תנאים לא תנאים.
אני מבקשת, אני יודעת שעובדים הרבה על עניין הזה, אבל יש עוד אנשים שמחכים מאוד לחיות בחוץ. אני מבקשת שאתם עושים הרבה כוח בשביל כולם יוצאים מהר. הימים זה מאוד קשים, יום אחד זה כמו שבוע שלם.
ואנא, דאגו לכך שקודם כל לשחרר את כולם, להחזיר אותם הביתה, ואחר כך תנקטו בפעולות צבאיות.
עומר עדיין שם, ואני יודע מה עובר שם. אני יודע איזה פחד יש שם. צריך להחזיר את עומר ואת כל החטופים עכשיו.
כמה שיותר מהר.
Colonel Grisha Yakubovich still with us here in the studio. Colonel Yakubovich, we've been talking about the timetable and the diplomatic pressure, the strategic angle and that tactic maneuver. At the end of the day, the most important thing at the end of this war is that these sorts of scenarios will never be possible again? That's the bottom line.
Well, I hope that the IDF will be able to achieve it. And I think that one of the most important things is not to use dates when the war will end. We hear a lot of many people and many assumptions that President Biden, let's say, in a way, authorized to the government of Israel to continue the war till the last of this year. I think a little bit different. I think that there is a big trust of President Biden personally, giving Israel the green light to continue with this operation until Hamas will be eliminated. And he takes a risk, and I'm sure that he also got a promise. This is a year of elections, let's not forget that. And I'm sure that the promise is that the moment Israel will complete the mission, the government of Israel will provide an achievement to the president by doing something for the better, for the future, of the two-state solution.
Yeah.
That's how I see that.
Yes. Again, with all the timetables and deadlines that are being presented, it is important to keep in mind that by the end of it all, October 7th can simply not happen again. There should be no option of it to happen again on the ground. Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. We are leaving you with the skyline of the Gaza Strip as the fighting there continues. Artillery and ground operations, of course, throughout the Gaza Strip from north to south. We will be back at the top of the hour with another bulletin as we continue our rolling coverage on day 65 of the war here in Israel. Until then, you can always get updated online at 24news.tv and on social media, bringing you all the latest updates from the ground. We will see you back at the top of the hour. Until then, thank you very much for watching.